Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to Open Mic, the show here on the John Campea YouTube channel, where we're just talking movies, just having some chat. You guys get to have your say. You send in your video questions, you send in your audio questions, and then it's just all live chatter. Think of this as the proverbial water cooler. We're all just here sitting around talking about movies together, a much more relaxed kind of version than, you know, the pre-constructed thing I do with the John Campea show earlier in the day. Here's how today's show is going to go, guys. I have picked out 3 video questions that you guys have sent in to me. Now, how do you send in a video question or an audio question to appear on Open Mic? You email me at john@thejohncampeashow.com and you put the words Open Mic. Guys, listen. I got to keep repeating this because some of you still send text questions to this. This is not for sending in text questions. This is only for sending us an audio file or a video file of yourself asking a question. Make sure you keep those audio or video questions to 20 seconds or less. And listen up, guys. Some of you have sent in some audio files with like some of the most weird and obscure audio extensions that like my machine can't even open. So try to send it in a standard audio file, whether it's an MPA or a MP3 or a or M4A in a what's the other one, or a WAV file or something like that. Just try to make sure you export it in one of the more standard files so I'll be able to watch it. Okay, so with that out of the way, let's just dive into the video questions and then we'll get into the live chat. So we start off with the first video question today that comes to us from Nathaniel, and Nathaniel sends us this.
Hey John, my name is Nate and I'm from Florida. I was just wondering if you were at all familiar with Lemony Snicket's A Series of Unfortunate Events. I loved the books growing up and I thought the movie was fine, but the Netflix series was just brilliant. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts or opinions on the series at all. Thanks.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny because I remember when the movie came out, it was like 2003, 2004, something like that. And it starred Jim Carrey. And I remember that was supposed to be the beginning of a cinematic franchise. That was supposed to be like a Harry Potter kind of situation where there would be 4, 5, 6, 7 of those films. Unfortunately, the movie wasn't received all that great. I actually thought I didn't think the movie was great, don't get me wrong. But I didn't think the movie was as bad as some people seem to think it was. I thought it was all right. I had an okay time with it. The movie didn't leave me in a position where I was like, oh, yes, please, more Lemony Snickets. To the point that when the Netflix series came out, I'll be honest with you, I wasn't interested, so I didn't jump on board with it. But Nate, you're not the only person I'm hearing saying that the show's actually quite good. So I've got it on my Netflix queue. I've got about 5 or 6 other shows I'm supposed to binge watch in front of it still, but I will get around to it, and as soon as I do, I'll let you know. But it's an interesting thing. You know, the funny thing is the guy who directed his name is Brad Silbering or something like that. Silbering. Anyway, he went on and he's directed a bunch of television stuff like that. He stayed active in the industry, but never really put out like a big, hit film or anything like that. But thanks for bringing it up, man, and I will be sure I will get around to checking it out. All right, let's go to the next video question. This one comes to us from Hemdi.
Hey John, so as a millennial, one of the biggest things that brought me to the Star Wars movie was actually watching the animated Clone Wars TV show. Do you think there'll ever be a cinematic version of this, and we'll get to see Ahsoka Tano and Captain Rex on the big screen? Especially since the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie then talks, they could push something in. What do you think, John? Because I'm gonna be so happy if that happens.
Well, of course, I mean, the first big obvious answer to your question about could they ever maybe do a movie version of Clone Wars, there was one. And it was actually the one that kicked it off. It's a horrible, wretched film. And a lot of people, that would stump a lot of people before the new movies started. Like before The Force Awakens came out. That would always throw a lot of people off. How many cinematic Star Wars films have there been? And people would say 6. The real answer is 7. The Clone Wars one was a theatrically released animated film, and it was so bad that I remember, I think I was still writing my website, the movie blog at the time, I think. I might have been past it at that point, I'm not sure, but I put up a video though called Star Wars is Officially Dead to Me. I remember I watched that because, I had already come around on the prequels that they were horrible, and in my opinion, they were horrible, and they just sickened me. And then, I was really excited for this animated thing, and then I was actually at the premiere. I was at the world premiere. I was there with George Lucas and all these guys. I was at the premiere for Star Wars Clone Wars, and I remember being so disillusioned. Like, it was so epically bad that I almost felt like I had just like had my head slammed into a concrete wall. And I walked out of the theater like almost punch drunk. Like I just couldn't believe what just happened. Like it was so wretchedly awful. Sky Guy and Little Stinky. I mean, what? What? Anyway, so there was a movie version. Now, I was never a fan. I'm one of those Star Wars fans that I actually didn't like the Clone Wars TV series. You'll find that most Star Wars fans really quite enjoy the Clone Wars TV series, although most will also agree that the movie was actually pretty bad. But I just never got into it. I tried. I watched the whole thing. To me, it just never clicked. There were certainly episodes that were better than others. There were certainly a couple of seasons that were better than others. Overall, though, I was never really a fan of the Clone Wars series, so that didn't work for me. So obviously, I'm of the opinion as a Star Wars fan, I have no desire to see another Clone Wars movie. It's time to move on from that era, I think. Now, would they ever do it? Also, I don't think they would. It's time to move on from that era. They did 6 films in that era. They did the Clone Wars TV series in that era. They did the Clone Wars movies in that era. It's time to move on from that era, and they got to get it behind them. And I don't think you're going to see Lucasfilm today do anything that makes people think too hard about the prequels. I think they want to get people away from the prequels as much as they can and not reference them much and all that kind of stuff. So I don't think they would do it, to be honest with you. And I know there's some fans like yourself who would be quite excited to see it, and that's awesome. But I think Lucasfilm has no desire to bring up the prequel era again. And I know I'm one of the people who I wouldn't be very interested in it myself. No, I don't know. Maybe someday they could do like a TV movie. Maybe they could do an animated special movie that they put on the Disney streaming service that's coming out in 2019. That opens up a lot of possibilities. But again, even then, I don't think they'd want to do it because, again, I don't think they want to turn people's attention and remind them of the prequel era. I think they're ready to move on from that. And who knows, though? Anything is possible. With this new Disney streaming service coming, anything is possible. So don't get your hopes down just yet about it. It is possible. All right, let's move on now to the final video question of the day.
Hey, John, Marcelo here. Do you think that Joss Whedon will ever create another TV show for all of us to enjoy, that he will show, run, direct, and write himself?
It's certainly possible. However, a couple of years ago, there was a documentary called Showrunners. And a guy I know was heavily involved in making, actually, a couple guys I know. One guy was heavily involved as producer, one guy was the director of it. It's a fascinating documentary. You should check it out. It's on iTunes, and you should be able to find it on Netflix, I think. And basically, it's a look at these people, these unsung people that never get any credit publicly, really, is the showrunner, the person in charge of a show. And one of the people that it interviewed was Joss Whedon, because he's been showrunner on a number of projects. And I just remember listening, although he didn't explicitly say it, I remember listening to him talk about it and listening to some of his interview footage. And it sounds like he doesn't have much desire ever to do that again. I mean, it is a torturous experience. I believe his exact quote on talking about being a showrunner was, "It is at the time the best and the worst job you will ever have." And there's certainly a lot of emotional highs and a lot of emotional lows and all that kind of stuff with it. But it seems to me Joss Whedon is not looking to get back into that grind, because when you're a showrunner, it is more than a full-time job. And it seems to me like Joss Whedon is now at that point in his career that he wants to be able to jump around between projects and do different creative things and express his creativity different ways. And it just doesn't seem to me, being a showrunner is not conducive to being at that stage in your career, or at least being in that place in your career that I think he wants to be in right now. So look, I believe there are many networks that if Joss Whedon went to them with a decent idea, they would get in line to let Joss Whedon be the showrunner and the lead writer and whatever on a TV show they do. I believe he would certainly have the opportunity if he wanted it. The big question comes, would he want it? And I just don't know that he does. At least now, who knows, maybe 5 years from now, it's a different situation and we'll get a brand new Joss Whedon TV series that he's truly behind. And a lot of people say, well, John, he's the producer on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He does nothing on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Believe you me, Joss Whedon does nothing on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He lends his name to it. He helped get the thing put together at first, and he gets the producer's credit, and they love putting Joss Whedon on it. But really, it's more, I believe his brother and his sister-in-law are the ones who really run that thing. But at any rate, so it's possible. I just don't think right now he wants to. And I think that's going to be the biggest thing that holds it up for fans of Joss Whedon who want to see more from him as we move forward. All right, guys, with that out of the way, let's jump over to the live questions for you guys in the live chat board, firing in questions. I'm going to, of course, give priority. I'm going to do all the super chat questions first because you guys want your questions asked the most, and you guys support the channel. Thank you so much for that. And then if there's still time after that, I will go to Twitter as well. So let's start things off here. And the first super chat comes to us from Digoto1, who writes, have you seen the full Dundee trailer? I know it's not a real movie, but I kind of wish it is now after seeing the cast. I mean, yes, I've seen all the marketing stuff they put out for this fake Dundee movie. I've seen it all. I am no closer to wanting it to be a movie. Now, don't get me wrong. When that first trailer came out with Danny McBride, I admit I was curious. Sure, I was curious, but I mean, would I really want one? No, not really. It seems like a silly idea, but there were possibilities. But nah, I'm honestly not one of these people. I'm dying to see what the big deal with this is. I'm dying to see what their Super Bowl spot is, because obviously this is all building up to something, which is very cool. But I am honestly not one of those people who's interested in actually, hey, this little marketing campaign, let's build a movie around it. I'm not one of those guys. I'm just not there. If you do, that's awesome, but I gotta admit it's not for me. All right, let's move on. Adam Griffin writes in, is 10 years enough time to fully appreciate a film in order to consider it a modern classic? Can films from 2008 like Dark Knight, Slumdog Millionaire, Benjamin Button, Wall-E, and more be classics? I think 10 years is possible, but I think 10 years is your minimum window. I think it's impossible to talk about it's going to be a classic, when the movie was out 5 years ago. I think 10 years is the starting point. I think that's the entryway. A movie like The Dark Knight, it has endured very, very well over the decade. It has endured very well. And now here we are 10 years later. I know it's weird to think about it that way, right? 10 years later. Here we are 10 years later, and we are starting to see that it has endured with its pop culture relevance. It has endured with its place amongst, movie fans' hierarchy of some of their favorite films. We've seen it endure. So now at the beginning, I believe that 10-year window is the beginning point, 10 years. We can start to see that Dark Knight is achieving that plateau, that level, if you will, of being considered a classic. Benjamin Button, not so much. Slumdog Millionaire, not so much. Slumdog Millionaire won a Best Picture award. Benjamin Button was nominated for Best Picture. Wall-E's, but, it's one thing to look at in terms of the 1 year, but it's not till you get like 10 years later that you can start to see how is this really starting to shake out. So is 10 years enough time period? No. But 10 years, I believe, is the beginning point of when you start to consider if something's there and whether you can legitimately start to say there is a case to be made for this movie to be considered a classic. Dark Knight, I believe, is one of those. I do. Wall-E may as well. I mean, Wall-E is still one of my most beloved animated films of all time. That film is brilliant and genius. But has it achieved that classic status yet? Let's give it some more time. But yeah, that's what I think. I think 10 years is the beginning point, and you can start to consider that question with movies right there. All right, good question, Adam. Next one comes to us from Starman. And Starman writes, hello, John. Is the Uncharted movie dead? Well, as far as I know, no. The Uncharted movie is plugging along. It's in development. Development could take 6 months. Development can take 6 years. But Charles Roven, who is the producer on it, and he was also the producer, I believe, was the producer on Dark Knight and the whole Dark Knight trilogy as well. So your questions are connected there. Charles Roven was recently interviewed and asked about it. And Sean Levy, the director of the Night at the Museum movies, he also directed the wonderful Real Steel. That movie's fantastic. And he also directed a whole bunch of episodes of Stranger Things. Sean Levy is attached to direct. Tom Holland, who of course plays Spider-Man. Tom Holland is attached to play Drake, Nathan Drake. And Charles Roven was just interviewed like within the last couple of days. And Charles Roven gave some details about the project. And he said, although the new movie will be based on the game in general, the specifics of the movie are not going to be from any one particular game. It's actually going to be a bit of a prequel to the game. So we're going to see a younger Nathan Drake. I think their idea here is that we're going to watch Tom Holland. This is their idea. Whether it'll work or not is totally another question. Their idea is they've got Tom Holland, this young actor, and if this movie works, they could have Tom Holland playing this role for 6 films, for 7 films. For the next 15 years, he could be playing the role. So they thought, let's start young. We're going to have like an origin story with Drake and Sully, and then we're just going to launch into it from there. So the project is not dead. It is alive and well. But, you know, development sometimes on these types of projects take a long time. These movies are investments of hundreds of millions of dollars when you can count production and marketing and all that kind of stuff. So these studios want to take their time. They want to make sure they've got it right. They want to make sure they got something that'll hit with the audience so it can be very profitable. And remember, they're not looking to just put out one movie, Uncharted. They want this to be a franchise. They want this to be 4, 5, 6, 7 movies. And the only way that's going to happen is if they strike a chord with the audience with their first one. They may fail. They may succeed. We won't know, but that's what they're going for. So they're going to be very careful in putting this thing together. But to answer your question, the Uncharted movie is not dead. It's still in motion, and it's still in development. All right. Next question comes to us from Jose M., who writes, this whole Black Panther Rotten Tomatoes score story is just sad. You honestly have to feel sad for these kind of basement dwellers who plainly aren't fans of film. Yeah, for those of you who don't know what he's talking about, we talked about a story a little bit earlier today on the John Campea show about how there's this group, this Facebook group that started by this guy, and the whole mission of the group is to organize themselves so that when the user voting opens on Rotten Tomatoes for Black Panther, they're trying to organize as many people as possible to go and downvote the film. And it's the last I checked, it already had over 2,000 members, which is stunning. It's important to understand, don't confuse the Rotten Tomato rating with the Rotten Tomato fan rating. Those are two different things. And the only thing these guys can affect is the fan rating. One of the reasons I've always tell people, do not pay attention to the Rotten Tomato fan rating. People get to vote without seeing the film. People find ways to vote multiple times. It's irrelevant. It's a completely, by the literal definition of the word, it's a corrupted system. Because the moment somebody can go on there who hasn't seen the movie and register a vote, the whole, whatever the score ends up being is completely doubted. The only reliable audience score rating is CinemaScore. And now you might say, but John, CinemaScore gave something a good score to a movie I didn't like. Yeah, but movie's still all subjective. There might be people who like the movie and you did. Nothing it's not telling you definitively whether a movie is good or not. That's why, generally speaking, I don't even pay attention to CinemaScore. I usually just pay attention to the critic scores. That's just me. But this is a great example of how the Rotten Tomatoes system, the audience rating system, and by the way, it's not just Rotten Tomatoes audience rating system, it's IMDb's audience rating system, and any audience rating system that doesn't verify the legitimacy of each vote being cast. And that's why CinemaScore is the only valid one, because CinemaScore is actually there at the movie theaters, verifying that the people coming out have seen the film and they get their votes there. But you're right. I mean, these people who do this are just pathetic. You're pathetic. It's really sad. Now, I had a very well-meaning guy on Twitter earlier today tweet to me and say, hey, John, to counter it, we should organize people to get ready to go and upvote Black Panther. And I said, that's just as bad. Now, I saw Black Panther. I really like Black Panther. The review embargo, can't say anything. But that's still just as corrupt. Let's organize people to go and upvote it no matter what, whether you've seen the movie or not. Let's go upvote it. That's just as corrupt. That is just as bad. At least your motives are positivity, but still, it's a corruption of the system just as much as these pathetic basement-dwelling, never touched another human being in a sexual way losers that are organizing this thing and trying to execute this thing. Just pathetic losers. So that's not the answer either. But yeah, it's just a joke. I mean, it's just a horrendous joke. And that's why I tell people, do not pay attention to these user ratings because they're gamed. They're completely gamed. So anyway, that's just my thought. Jose also writes, I heard Jay apologize to you. It takes 2 gentlemen to come out and face his mistakes. Hopefully the incident is behind both, keeping film fans. yeah, Jay got on Twitter and issued an apology. I appreciated that very much. I'm not going to talk about it, but he did. I think it's important to note that he did that, and I appreciate that he did that. And he and I may get together here in the near future. Johnny Mejia writes, thoughts on Mayweather MMA talks? Never going to happen. Never going to happen. Mayweather, look, I don't care what your thoughts are on Mayweather. Floyd Mayweather is indisputably at least one of the greatest boxers of all time. You can argue about where on that list he is, but you can't he's one of the greatest boxers of all time. But I'm sorry, guys. He wouldn't last 1 minute in an MMA cage with a number 25 ranked MMA fighter, with a number 100 ranked MMA fighter. Within 15 seconds, he'll be taken down, he'll be ground and pounded out, and he'll lose some teeth. That's just the way it is. You know, you put one of the greatest MMA fighters in the Notorious one, you put him in a boxing ring with Mayweather, and Mayweather beats him rather easily. Sure, in the boxing ring, Mayweather will dominate, no doubt. Go the other way, it's look, Mayweather knows he would get demolished. Look, I say this with full confidence. In an MMA cage, Ronda Rousey will beat Floyd Mayweather. I'll say that with every confidence in the world. Ronda Rousey will get her hand on one of his fingers and then it's done. I mean, it's just no contest. Just like it's no contest for an MMA fighter who thinks they're a good fighter to actually step in a boxing ring with a true boxer. There's just no chance. There's no chance. The other way around, Mayweather will be lucky if he walks out with both of his arms still attached. He'd just be mauled and destroyed. He knows this too. He knows this. No way this happens. Now watch this. 3 days from now, ESPN, Floyd Mayweather to have first UFC fight, and I'll go, what the hell? But for now, until that happens, I'm saying there is no way that ever happens. Mayweather would have to be a moron of epic proportions. Hey, look, I'll admire his moxie if he got into an MMA cage with a real MMA fighter. If he did, hey, all the credit in the world, no one will ever be able to say that he doesn't have balls. But it would be a monumentally stupid thing for him because he's not just going to lose, he's going to get embarrassed. And why would he want to do that at this point of his career? When he's basically ready to he's in retirement and he's got a legacy, and I just don't know why he would do something like that. It seems very strange. Pardon me. Okay. Matt Guillemette writes, just heard about Andy Signore, blew my mind. Dude, that was like 5 months ago. Or 4 months ago. Where have you been, man? It's been forever. Unless there's something new you're talking about, but that was forever ago. You know what? Just in case, I am going to check just to make sure there's not something new that I missed. And no, apparently there's nothing new that I missed. So anyway, yeah, it's that was forever ago. So I can't believe you're just hearing about it now. But oh well. Yeah, and it is mind-blowing. It is absolutely mind-blowing. Craig Hutchings writes, hey, Inglorious Basterds is my favorite film. Thoughts? I hated Inglorious Basterds when I first saw it. That's the movie to me. Whenever the question comes up, and it comes up at least 2 or 3 times a year, John, what's a movie you didn't like, but now you do? Inglorious Basterds. I hated it the first time I saw it. I didn't just not like it. I thought Inglorious Basterds was terrible the first time I saw it. Anyway, then I had a bunch of DVDs, and Inglorious Basterds was one of them there. And this is before I married Ann. And I had this girl come over. We were hanging out. I was like, what movie do you want to watch? She goes, oh, I want to see that. It's a Quentin Tarantino one. I haven't seen it, the Inglorious Basterds. And me, I just want the girl to be happy, right? So I'm like, okay, sure, let's put it in. And I watch it. I'm like, what movie did I watch before? This is awesome. So I really liked Inglorious Basterds. I don't know what was wrong. If I was just in a brutally bad mood the first time I saw the movie, I don't know what it is, but it is one of those very, 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 very rare films for me that I did not like the first time I see it, and then it really grew on to me to the point that I love the film. And it's a rare one for me like that. But yeah, I like Inglorious Basterds very much. Kevin King writes, I would love CW to Agent Carter Superman during their big break in February. They could have a short 8-episode season of Superman. What do you think? I don't know, man. Like, first of all, CW only brought Superman onto their show, onto their network, to be Supergirl's bitch. That's what they did. The whole point of them having Superman there was to put Supergirl over. And so Superman could be her bitch. Could be, yeah. I mean, that was basically it. They sullied Superman on that show. I'll be honest with you, Kevin. I don't want them touching Superman. I really don't. I really believe that their big three, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, should never be on TV. I feel like you reserve those characters and protect those characters just for the movies. That's the way I feel. Now, a lot of you guys may feel different, and Kevin, you probably feel very different too. I mean, the fact that you're bringing up this question, obviously. And I'm not trying to change your mind. I'm just saying, for me, I do not trust what they would do with those characters on television. They brought Superman onto Supergirl, and they just used him as a step over. They use the old wrestling term is jobbing. So for those of you who aren't familiar with wrestling terms, a jobber was somebody whose their role in the WWE was to go into the wrestling ring and wrestle, but they will lose all the time. They were just there to make the other guy look good. They were sent in there to lose to that other guy, to put the other guy over, to make the other guy look good. That's what a jobber did. The whole reason they brought in Superman into the Supergirl series was for him to be a jobber. They brought him in just to make Supergirl look good. And I'm sorry, there are characters you can do that with, but you don't do that with Superman. And it really pissed me off that they did that. It's like there's 1,000 other characters you could have brought in from the DC Cinematic Universe to do that. You don't do that to Batman, you don't do that to Wonder Woman, and you don't do that to Superman. Those are 3 characters you never send in as jobbers. You never job Wonder Woman, Batman, or Superman. Ever. And the fact that they did that with Superman on their TV show really pissed me off. And I'll tell you what, I never did like the show. I started watching it again this past year because they brought Superman in. Some people said some cool things were happening. So I started following the show. Then I got to the point where they just started jobbing Superman to Supergirl. I'm like, okay, nope, fuck you. I'm out. And I ditched the show because I'm not going to watch it ever again. Because you do not job Superman, you do not job Batman, and you do not job Wonder Woman. You got hundreds of other characters to do that with. You don't do that with the big 3. Anyway, it just kind of pissed me off. Far more than it should. It's just a TV show, for heaven's sakes. And look how angry I'm getting. It's ridiculous. But hey, it is what it is. All right. Luke1234 writes, how would you solve the economic crisis? I would legalize brothel prostitution and put it under a slightly higher tax bracket. Well, that would certainly be a financial shot in the arm, but it would not fix the economic crisis. One could say that ever since Barack Obama became president, there hasn't really been an economic crisis. It was like a lot of people forget about this. Just how bad things were just before that election between John McCain and Barack Obama. The financial crisis was so bad that Senator McCain and Barack Obama, they both had to cancel their campaigns to go back to Washington because the entire economy was about to collapse. And John McCain and Barack Obama both went, yeah, let's put the campaign aside for a second. Let's go stop America from dying. Let's go do that. And people forget just how close it came. It was a brutal, brutal time. But what would I do? Oh, dude. You're talking to a guy who, when I have a $10 bill and she goes, that'll be $6.74, I got to stand there for 3 minutes to try to figure out, okay, so how much change am I getting? I'm the wrong guy to ask. I'm totally the wrong guy to ask. You're asking the right question. You're just asking the question to the wrong guy. Dr. Strangelove writes, thoughts on Bubba Ho-Tep? Love Bubba Ho-Tep. Love Bubba Ho-Tep. Now, some of you out there right now are going, what the hell is a Bubba Ho-Tep? Bubba Ho-Tep is this little movie That's so ridiculous. And it imagines, what if Elvis Presley never died? He actually was just trying to take a break from his life. So back in the day, he hired a lookalike to swap places with him just so he could take a break and get away from it. And it was the lookalike who died. And now Elvis Presley is now living in a senior citizen's home. Nobody knows he's really Elvis Presley. And he lives in the senior citizen home. And wouldn't you know it, an ancient Egyptian mummy starts attacking the senior citizen's home, feeding on the senior citizens as they sleep. And it's up to Elvis Presley to save the day. It is as spectacular as it sounds. And it stars Bruce Campbell as Bubba Ho, and I think Paul Giamatti. It's been years since I've seen it. But guys, thank you, Dr. Stranger, for bringing it up. If you have not seen Bubba Ho-Tep, look it up. It's ridiculous fun. And it's funny, and it's really cool. Check out Bubba Ho-Tep if you have not had a chance to do that. Tony Bush writes, now that you've watched Black Panther, Logan, and 3:10 to Yuma, how do you stack James Mangold, Ryan Coogler? Well, look, I got to be very careful with Tony, because I don't want to get into anything that could be construed as me reviewing what Coogler did with Black Panther. So I want to be very careful. But they are two very different directors with very different styles and distinct looks. First of all, look, I love both of these guys. Coogler, whether you're talking about Black Panther, which already I wrote on my Twitter that I thought was great, but Black Panther, what he did with Creed, Fruitvale Station was amazing. Obviously, his collaboration work with Michael B. Jordan is amazing. James Mangold's done very different types of films. So I'm not going to put them in any kind of a pecking order, other than to say I'm a fan of both. I think they both do great work. Anytime either of them put a movie out, I'm going to be highly interested in. And maybe we'll get more into it after Black Panther comes out, or at least after the Black Panther review embargo lifts on February 6th. But until then, I'm going to just play it a little bit close to the vest, Tony. I'm going to play a little close to the vest. Chris Warden writes, if Paramount decides to go ahead with a new Star Trek film in the JJ verse, let's see, do you think they should be more aware of when they release it? In my opinion, the July release date in an overcrowded summer schedule will hurt Star Trek Beyond. I'm not completely sure I agree with that. Look, the summer season is a season when people go to the movies. So maybe it's a little bit more overcrowded than other times, but also more people are going out to the movies than at any other time. It depends, and it also depends on the movie itself. There are some movies who their franchise, maybe you wouldn't figure them as a summer film, but this one particular installment of the franchise suits the summer season very well. So it really all depends. I think they need to do what they're going to do, which is, if they go ahead and make this film, they're going to make the film, or they're at least going to get a completed script, get a basic outline, do the development on it, and get a basic idea of what this movie is really going to be, maybe even get it in production before they set a release date. Once they get a sense through the development process of what kind of movie this is going to be, then they'll make their decision as far as release date. But honestly, I think far too much weight is given to when something releases. Other than, hey, you don't want to open your movie, against a much bigger movie of the same demographic. Obviously that. But as far as what time of the year goes, I really don't think there's a hard and fast rule. I don't think you can say Star Trek doesn't match well with the summer season, because which Star Trek? There are so many different Star Trek movies that are so different from the others, right? So I think you got to take a look at the individual film. And I think once they get through the development and before they do the final official green light on production and they get a sense of the movie it's going to be, then we can start talking about when they're going to drop it and where in the calendar year they're going to fit it in. Good observation though, Chris. All right. Go Kusan Goku's son, Dragon Ball Z writes, what is your opinion on the movie The Truman Show? Oh, it was great. It was kind of groundbreaking. It wasn't the first of its kind. The Truman Show, there was one with Matthew McConaughey. I'm pretty sure it was Matthew McConaughey. That was kind of the same premise. I'm trying to remember. If you guys in the chat board know which one we're talking about, there was another movie that was much like The Truman Show. It was a reality TV show was being based on this guy's life. And I think it was Matthew McConaughey. Maybe it was another actor. I can't remember. But anyway, Truman Show was great. It was social commentary. It was the human experience kind of observational thing. It had really nice performance from Jim Carrey. The supporting cast was Ed TV. Thank you, everybody, in the both Gyro and Ben Rayner. Ed TV. Ed TV was the name of the movie. And actually, you know what? Ed TV was pretty good, too. And nobody thinks about Ed TV anymore. But honestly, it was a pretty good little movie. You should check it out if you get a chance. Anyway. But yeah, Truman Show was a really nice movie, and I enjoy it. And it's one of those films that I will go back and watch about once a year. Usually at home, I'll just pop it on and give it a watch. So yes, thanks for bringing that one up. Van Sensei writes, don't you feel even a slight comic book movie burnout overload? No. No. I mean, seriously, a comic book movie, what? I've had 6 in the last year? You know how much comedies I've watched on TV this year? Probably about 200 episodes. See, I will never understand this mentality. Like, burnout only comes when I start to get fatigue for me starts to set in when the quality starts to drop. Like, I can go to a 4-star restaurant, and if they keep cranking out really good food, I do not get tired of eating there. I just don't get tired of eating there. Like, I go to Yard House, that's here in Burbank, right? And the only time I stopped going to Yard House for a certain period of time was when I had a couple of bad meals in a row. It's like, that sucks, so I stopped going for a while. Because I got tired of going there because I had a couple meals in a row that did not live up to my expectations. Then I tried it again. It's like, oh, this meal's great. And then I'm right back into it, right? So as long as I keep going. The thing about burnout for me, at any rate, is about the quality that I'm being fed. If the movie industry is feeding me quality comic book movies that I'm enjoying, then no, I don't get tired of it. I don't get tired of sex as long as the sex is good. I don't get tired of great food if the food is good. I don't get tired of comic book movies if the comic book movies continue to come out at a high level. And, you know, we're talking in a year that I just saw Spider-Man Homecoming, which I loved, Thor Ragnarok, which I loved, Logan, which was the best film of the year. I just saw Black Panther. I mean, so no, I do not feel the slightest bit of fatigue in it at all. A day will come when we're going to get a streak of poor product. There will come a time when we will get a streak of poor product, and you're going to see the comic book genre get reeled in a bit, and then later it'll reemerge again, and it'll go in cycles. So it'll go in cycles. But as of right now, no, man, I think we're riding on a high. I think we're riding on a high right now. And not to say that anybody who does feel overload or fatigue from them is wrong. No, not at all. But I'm just saying, for me personally, hey, man, as long as the food's good, as long as the sex is good, as long as the comic book movies are good, I ain't going to get tired of it. That's just my point of view on it. All right. Ben Rayner writes, what happened to Steve Martin? Do you think he will make another movie? I can't remember the last movie he was in. Can you? That's a good question. Well, look, Steve Martin is also not a young man. Here's the funny thing about Steve Martin. Steve Martin, I was watching, once again, another movie I watch at least once a year is Dirty Rotten Scoundrels with Michael Caine and Steve Martin. One of the best comedies ever made. Like, just one of the best comedies ever made. And what's so funny is that movie came out, I don't know, over 20 years ago. And Steve Martin doesn't look all that different now than he did 20. He certainly doesn't look like he's aged 20 years. Actually, let me see, when did Dirty Rotten Scoundrels come out? Let's see. Dirty Rotten Scoundrels came out in 1988. Are you freaking kidding me? So we're talking like 30 years ago. 30 years ago, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels came out. Holy shit. 30 years ago. And he don't look all that different. I mean, he's now 72. He's 72 years old. So let's see. The last movie he's got listed as an actor, well, he was in Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk. We know that. Then he was in a few other things. I think he's been really big into his music. He is like, look up Steve Martin banjo. Because him and his band are amazing to watch. I'm not a banjo music guy, but holy crap, I once went down this YouTube rabbit hole where I just started for about an hour and a half. I just watched various Steve Martin banjo videos on YouTube. I kid you not. The dude is ridiculously talented. Like, just outrageously good at it, and his band is fun and energetic. It's really great music to listen to. Give that a check if you have a chance. But remember, he's also teaching now. I think he's teaching acting across the country. He's doing some online courses in teaching and comedy and things like that. But like I said, I think he's in his 70s now, mid 70s. So I mean, he's slowing down. I think he's slowing down, and good for him. Good for him. Okay, let's see this. Tony Bush writes. Oh, I lost Tony Bush. Where did Tony Bush go? Oh, by the way, guys, I'm sorry. I forgot to mention, if you have not sent in a super chat yet, please do not send in a super chat. No more chat questions, guys, please. Sorry, that's my bad. I forgot to mention that. I'm mentioning it now. Please, no more super chats. All right, Tony Bush writes, Chastain and Natalie Portman's film, Life of John, finished filming last spring. I don't demand trailers ever, but come on now. This film started in 2015. Yeah, but I don't even know if they've got a release date for it, do they? Let me just check to see if they've got a release date for the movie. I'm not seeing it. Hold on a second. Natalie Portman. I mean, this might be a movie that just sits on the shelf, to be honest with you. Yeah, I'm not seeing anything listed. Like, at all. So this may be a film that's not even getting released. Gosh, and I vaguely even remember hearing anything about it. So, yeah, I mean, and then again, what's the point? Like, maybe you know, and I don't know. Maybe you guys in the chat board know if there is actually a release date. But as far as I know, there's no plans to release the film. So I don't know that, you can't have a trailer for a film that isn't being released. But maybe you guys do know something about that. If you do, jump it into the chat board. Ben Rayner writes, which is funnier to you, When Harry Met Sally or City Slickers? I love both, but I choose City Slickers. How about you? I actually go the other way. Both wonderful films, but I go When Harry Met Sally. There's just something iconic. And of course, when Harry Met Sally has one of the greatest scenes, most celebrated scenes in cinematic history. Billy Crystal, Meg Ryan in the restaurant and her doing the fake orgasm voice. It is one of the most classic scenes of all time. To me, When Harry Met Sally takes an edge over City Slickers. Devontae Brown writes, I've debated this. Is Split really good if third act tone shift only makes sense if it's the Unbreakable universe? Everything else before it felt grounded. I think it makes sense. And I think it's still good. I was enjoying the film even up until what happened at the end, and it put it into a different context in my head. If they went in a different direction, the first 2 acts and 3/4 were still solid. So yes, I think the third act is still really good, even though they went the direction that it went. But I mean, you raise a good point, Devontae. It is difficult to imagine that film without its ending. It's difficult to imagine what our perception of the movie even is without that ending. Another film like that is Sixth Sense. It's difficult because now when we think of Sixth Sense, we think of it in terms of the ending, right? We look at it through the lenses of that ending. You can also say the same of Usual Suspects. We look at it now through that lens. It is difficult to imagine what would I have thought now, so many years later, of Usual Suspects if that ending had been different? What would we have thought of Sixth Sense if that ending had been different? How would we perceive or see Split if the ending had been different? It's a great question, but it is how it ended. It is part of the movie. So I think it's still really good, but it's difficult to really speculate beyond that because it's hard to know. Jacob Lee writes, let's see. Your initial reaction to the prequels was positive, drank the Kool-Aid, but you changed your mind. Do you think the same might be possible with the new films? No, because here's why. Because when I saw the original films, each time I saw it after the first time, I liked it less and less and less. And every time I saw them, it was less and less. And to the point that I finally went, okay, yeah, this movie sucks. And then the next one come out and say, okay, no, this one's going to do it. And it did it. And then I would watch it again and realize, no. And then I watched again, no, and no, and no, and no, and no, and no, and no. Blah, blah, blah. I had completely the opposite experience with the new Star Wars movies. When I went to see The Phantom Menace, when I went to go see The Force Awakens, every time I saw it, I liked it more and more and more and more. Every time I still see Rogue One, because I've got it on my Roku, every time I watch Rogue One, I like it more and more and more and more. Every time I watch The Force Awakens, I like it more. Not more like this, but more like this. I appreciate it more every time I watch it. The Force Awakens, I don't think it's good, or The Last Jedi, I don't think is good as The Force Awakens. I don't think The Last Jedi is as good as Rogue One. I do believe it's better than all the prequels. I don't think it's as good as any of the original trilogy. But yeah, that's the big key difference, is that every time I saw one of the prequels, I liked it less and less and less and less, to the point that I finally went, yep, I realize this now. And I learned a lesson from those, and it's never really happened to me again. That happened to me almost 20 years ago. Hasn't really happened to me again since, but that big key defining factor is, with the prequels, right on my second viewing, I started to realizing my enjoyment of the film was dropping rapidly. With the new films, my enjoyment continues to increase, so that's really the big difference between the two situations. Elijah A. Name writes, is it possible that we can have two Bateman, I'm thinking you mean Batman, is it possible we can have two Batman in different universes, one in the DCU, Affleck, and the other in a standalone Elseworld? Jake, I don't think that's what they're going to do. I mean, theoretically, can you do it? Yes, you can do it. Theoretically, you can do 20 different Batman. Sure, you can. But I really don't see them doing that. I think they're simply going to pick a direction and go with it. And what their direction is right now, I don't think they have it figured out yet. I really don't. But possible? Yes. Likely? I think very much not. But who knows? We'll have to wait and see. Ben Rayner writes, does Steven Spielberg have anything to do with the Transformers movies, or is it just his name? He was involved in the first one to a degree. He was certainly involved in the setup of it and all that kind of stuff, but he hasn't touched anything on that franchise since. His name just gets attached on there as a producer. He collects a bit of a check from them, but he doesn't do anything on those movies. Evan Jenkins writes, could an Injustice movie be possible? I think it's a unique idea that maybe the DCEU could maybe need after the other DC. No, it won't happen. Maybe they'll do like a little animated film to put out in home video or a streaming service, but they're never going to do a big blockbuster Justice League movie or Injustice Gods Among Us. I love Injustice Gods Among Us. Completely love it. But to anybody who isn't well versed in the DC lore, it's not going to work nearly as well. Like, part of the reason Injustice Gods Among Us works for me is because I am well versed in the DC lore. So like everything they got going on, I understand the meaning of it. And the meaning is what gives it oomph, is what gives it depth, is what gives it impact. The average film goer who only knows that, oh, that's Batman and that's Superman, isn't going to catch nearly any of that. And I think it would just be confusing to a lot of people. And so, no, I don't see the studio putting up a, $200-300 million to make and market an Injustice Gods Among Us live action film, because it just would not hit with the audience. I just don't think. But I love Injustice Gods Among Us. Oh my God, so much. Goku's son Dragon Ball Z writes, have you heard anything on the Chronicles of Narnia? I haven't paid really close attention to it. I keep hearing it's been picked up again, but then again, I've been hearing that for years. Been hearing, oh, they are doing another Chronicles of Narnia movie, and then hearing that got scrapped. Then I hear, oh, they are doing another Chronicles of Narnia movie. I haven't been keeping my ear to the ground on it, to be honest with you. It's one of those situations where if they do it, and then we'll talk about it. But off the top of my head, I'm not aware of any, current developments. So let's see if anything actually does transpire. Devontae Brown writes, take us back, John. How is the hype for the Matrix sequels? Did audiences clap at trailers in theaters? Did many people stay after credits for Matrix 3 teaser? If I remember correctly, I believe the audience was very enthusiastic for the Matrix sequels. If I remember it right, because the Matrix was just a phenomenon, right? It was great. Not a lot of people. I wasn't looking forward to it. It's like, it's got that Keanu Reeves guy in it. It looked kind of silly. Movie is great, right? So it caught the world by storm. So people were looking forward to the sequels and things like that. I can't remember post-credit scenes and stuff like that off the top of my head, because we're talking a lot of years ago. But yeah, people were looking forward to it for sure. Craig Hutchings writes, what football team, soccer team do you support? Well, I don't watch soccer. I mean, because I'm from the Toronto area, I'll support Toronto FC, but but I don't know it. The only time I watch soccer, to be honest, is the World Cup. And I'm not even going to watch the World Cup this year because for some reason Italy didn't qualify for the World Cup, which is mind-boggling to me that Italy didn't make it. So anyway, but yeah, generally speaking, I'm not a soccer fan. Hector Martin Navarro writes, what makes a cinematic universe be? Where is the hard line between something like the MCU and a saga of films, Lord of the Rings plus Hobbit, Mission Impossible? Well, with Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit and Mission Impossible, you're just talking about a single franchise. The MCU is a collection of franchises all sharing one universe. You have the Iron Man franchise, you have the Captain America franchise, you have the Thor franchise, you have now the Ant-Man franchise. We're going to have a Black Panther franchise, we're going to have a Doctor Strange franchise, and now all these individual franchises sharing one universe. Mission Impossible is a singular franchise. Lord of the Rings, really, when you think about it in its chronology, is one singular franchise. Now, if they did a Lord of the Rings, and then they did another movie called The Hobbits Beyond the Misty Mountain, where it's another village of hobbits, and they have their own adventures. And then they talk about the elves of the East. And it's just totally different sets of movies with their own adventures, but they all share the same world. Now you're talking about a cinematic universe. The difference between a cinematic universe is simply this. You have franchises that are just franchises. Multiple franchises in the same world is a cinematic universe. So that's kind of how, at least I look at it. That's how I define it. Good question, though. Sam Fisher writes, first solo trailer on Good Morning America on February 5th. I don't know that that's confirmed. I think, so here's what happened. The Hollywood Reporter earlier today said that it is likely that we're going to get the first look at Solo at the Super Bowl. Then came out a report saying it's actually going to be on Good Morning America on Friday, February 5th. What a lot of people are now speculating, and I'm buying into this theory, is that they're going to do like a 15-second glimpse of the Solo trailer. They're going to do a trailer for a trailer, which normally I hate. They're going to do a trailer for a trailer, I think. What a lot of people are speculating is that they're going to do a trailer for a trailer at the Super Bowl. A 15-second look at the trailer. And then they'll launch the full trailer the following morning. So either way, by lunch on Monday, whether it's fully at the Super Bowl or fully at Good Morning America, by lunch on Monday, we will have all seen the first trailer for Solo. And we can finally stop all the discussions about where's the Solo trailer. Those discussions are finally going to be over. So one way or another, we're getting it. All right. Maybe One Name writes, it seems odd to me that the Infinity War is coming out on May 4th and not Solo. Seems like a missed opportunity to have a great Star Wars day. Sure, but I mean, and look, it's May the 4th is still May the 4th, whatever. More people aren't going to run to the theaters just because it's May the 4th. I mean, we're all going to go see Solo opening weekend. Let's just call it what it is. We're all going to see Avengers Infinity War opening weekend. So it really doesn't matter all that much. Look, if I was the guy in charge 2 years ago and I'm looking at 2018, then yeah, maybe I put Solo on May the 4th, but it's not really that big a deal. To call it a missed opportunity means it would make a significant impact, and I really don't think it will. I think it's a cool idea. It's good for optics, but I don't really think it ultimately would make any sort of a difference. Adam K. writes, earlier today you said Split was an adapted screenplay due to the ending. However, I looked online and found out it campaigned in original. Thoughts? Doesn't matter what they campaign it as. It makes no difference what they campaign it as. What would have happened is if the Academy was going to nominate it, the Academy would have looked at it and said, well, you don't qualify. From everything that I read, the Academy is actually quite stringent on this. If it is a sequel, if it is based on previous material in any way, it's an adapted screenplay. So they may have campaigned it as original, but it doesn't matter. The Oscar rules probably would have overridden that, and they would have put it into the adapted thing. From everything that I understand about the rules, and I'm not an Academy rules expert by any stretch, but the rules I looked up seem pretty cut and clear. If it's associated with another movie, if it's a sequel in any way, if it's connected to another movie, if it shares characters, it is an adapted screenplay. So, I mean, who knows? Maybe they would have done it different, but from everything that I can understand from it, it seems like that's the way that we would have done it. Kern Dog 1 writes, are you a fan of wrestling, not pro wrestling at all? And thank you for making weight cutting something bearable. I used to wrestle in high school. I did. I used to wrestle in high school a little bit. I like wrestling. I will admit I don't follow wrestling. I certainly watch wrestling when it's on in the Olympics and things like that. Yes, I do. But I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't follow the NCAA rankings and all that kind of stuff. I don't, but I am an admirer of wrestling because everybody knows collegiate wrestlers make some of the best MMA fighters, because I'm much more into MMA, but the really good collegiate wrestlers are really the people who are best poised to be good MMA fighters. Because when you're a good wrestler, if you're the better wrestler, I find that 7 times out of 10, if you're the better wrestler in a MMA match, you pretty much will dictate where the fight goes. Now, you may win and you may lose, but when you're the better wrestler, you're the one who dictate where the fight happens. You can dictate if this fight's going to happen on its feet, or if this fight's going to happen on the ground, and or if the fight's going to happen in the center of the ring, or if the fight's going to happen against the cage most of the time. You are the one who's going to dictate that. And you may win and you may lose, but you'll at least be able to dictate where it happens. And that's why I find where like the better wrestlers tend to be able to do that. So I'm on that level, I'm a huge fan of the discipline of wrestling. Let's see. Old Flicks Joe writes, John, do you think Logan should have been nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor, and Best Supporting Actor? I can see the argument for not having Hugh Jackman nominated as Best Actor. I'm not just going to overly fanboy about it. The Best Actor category was stacked. And I have no problem with Hugh Jackman not getting nominated. And to be honest with you, I wouldn't have nominated him. He was fantastic in it. He was absolutely brilliant in it. But he wasn't in my top 5. Patrick Stewart, yes. Patrick Stewart should have been nominated for Best Supporting Actor. And Logan, since it was the best fucking movie of the year, Logan should have been nominated for Best Picture. But it wasn't, whatever. Hey, look, they nominated it for Best Screenplay. That is huge. Never happened with a comic book superhero movie before in history. And Logan got that nomination, and that's huge. But no for Hugh Jackman, yes for Patrick Stewart, yes for Best Picture. Goku-san writes, thoughts on Ronda Rousey and the WWE. She's a terrible actress. She can't do movies, for heaven's sakes. You know what? I don't need the headphones anymore. I'm just going to take these off. She's a terrible actress, so she certainly doesn't belong in movies. I mean, we saw her come out at, what was it? The Royal Rumble. We saw her come out at the Royal Rumble, and she was terrible. She's just, I mean, but hey, where else is she supposed to go now? The UFC doesn't want her fighting. She can't act. So all these movie plans that were there, they've all pretty much fallen apart. I'm sure she'll still get supporting bits here and there, and maybe even a lead in some B or C level movie here or there, but she can't act. So why not go do something that you can use your athletic prowess, like wrestling? I actually think she'll succeed. I think she will pick up in-ring performing very quickly. So I think it was a good move for her. Honestly, I think it was the only move for her, but I think it was a good move for her to do that. Charles Harkins writes, Lana, Lois, or Chloe, who's your favorite? Always Lois. Always Lois. Let's see. Charles Harkins writes, do you watch Unbox Therapy or Linneus? Nope, don't watch either of them. I don't have a problem with either of them. I've just never watched them. Entertainment Buddy writes, Harry Potter reboot in, say, 20 years? Dude, I could see it happening in less. I really can't. It's been a while since the first Harry Potter movie came out. I could see it happening maybe in less. I think the more likely scenario, though, is J.K. just decides, you know what? I miss those days when every day they backed up dump trucks full of gold bullion to my house. I'm going to just start writing more Harry Potter stories. So I think that's probably the more likely scenario, though. Med6814 says, have you seen Miller's Crossing? What do you think? Yeah, I did. I liked it. I mean, I understand the concerns that some people had with it. I do. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to gloss over that, but I thought it was pretty good. Espo Jason writes, thank you, John. Big fan for years. My question is, does Deadpool 2 in its second week hold Solo to a second place debut? No. No. But it'll do well. Deadpool 2 will do well. But it's not going to hold Solo to second place. It's just not. Because, look, Deadpool, whatever money it makes, Deadpool will take minimum a 40% drop to week 2. And that's great. A 40% drop is fantastic. So, but minimum, it's going to take a 40% drop. I don't see Han Solo having an opening weekend that's 40% less than Deadpool. I could see Deadpool having the bigger opening weekend than Solo does. Yes. Would Solo take a 40% less opening weekend than Deadpool? No, I can't see that happening. And that's a minimum drop. So Deadpool will be number 2. Solo will be number 1. But I think overall, my early guesstimates is that Deadpool overall will make more money. But yeah, Deadpool will win its opening weekend. If they both open on the same weekend, Deadpool wins, I think. But they're not opening on the same weekend. Deadpool is going to go into its second week. It's minimum going to take a 40% drop, probably 50, and that's still very good. It's probably take a 50% drop. And the math just works out a certain way. So Solo will be number 1 at the theaters on its opening weekend. Elijah A. Name writes, is it safer, cheaper, to do a live-action Dragon Ball Z movie or a CGI movie like Final Fantasy Advent Children? It really depends on what you want to do. You can make a live-action, if you wanted to, you can make a live-action Dragon Ball Z movie for $25 million if you wanted to. You can make it for 50, you can make it for 75, or you can make it for $175 million. So there's really no way to answer that, Elijah. It's because it all depends on what they wanted to do with it. You can make it for 25, you can make it for 200 million. So it really all depends on what their approach to it was. And I'll be honest with you, a Dragon Ball Z movie won't work. And I know my friends who are Dragon Ball Z lovers always get mad when I say that, but I'm sorry, it's the truth. A Dragon Ball Z feature film would not do well. I just do not believe it would do well, because if it would have done well, they would have done 5 of them by now. And I just don't think it'll work. I'm not disparaging on Dragon Ball Z as an IP, not at all. I know a lot of people who love that IP. I'm not talking against it, but I'm just from a black and white business point of view, just from a business point of view, doesn't work. I don't think it'll get made. So I think either one is kind of a moot point. Paul writes, in my opinion, Emilia Clarke's performance in Solo will be crucial for her future Hollywood career. Agree? In my opinion, she's perfect in Game of Thrones, but mediocre in Terminator. May the Force, MB4U? Oh, Me Before You. Right. Yeah, I thought she was okay in Me Before You. I did not think she was strong in Terminator. She is great in Game of Thrones, but she's the only person we've ever known in that role. I don't think you're wrong, Paul. I think this is going to be a really important moment for her career, is playing in this Solo film. This is going to be an important moment. Can she actually come to a big franchise film and bring it? And she's going to have the opportunity to do it, because if she doesn't, I think you're right. I think this could hurt her career. But if she brings it on this stage and shows, hey, I can shine outside of Game of Thrones. Because she hasn't done it yet, but if she does it on a stage like a Star Wars movie, it bodes very well for her. If she doesn't, it bodes very badly for her. So I agree. And I think she'll do well. I do. But I think you're right, Paul. I think this is going to be a huge test for her. This is going to be a huge challenge. Let's see if she can live up to it. The good news for her is that she's lately now been in the hands of a director like Ron Howard. So that will work to her benefit. All right. Pensive Ruin writes, what people think about Rey and Luke's Supergirl? No idea what you're saying, Pensive Ruin. No idea whatsoever. Devontae Brown writes, John, finale was only episode Superman was a bitch. Yes, but they made it clear that the whole point of him being there was for that moment to put over Supergirl and to job to her. Now, forever in that CW universe, Superman's number 2. Superman's number 2 in the CW universe. And it just bothered me that season finale when at least 3 times, they had to have Superman say it. Kara, you bested me in combat. You are Earth's champion, not me. It's like, you don't do that to Superman. You don't do it to Wonder Woman, and you don't do that to Batman. And it just became clear the whole reason they brought him into that show was for that moment, to put her over. So it's kind of unfortunate. Anyway, next question comes to us from Charles Harkins, who writes, I'm an Elizabethtown apologist. Am I in the minority? Yep, I did not like that movie whatsoever, man. I saw what they were trying to do. I can understand probably how on the page it looked like it might work out, but Elizabethtown did not work for me. Entertainment Buddy writes, latest we get first Aquaman trailer. Probably, if they don't move it, probably August. I'm going to guess August. There you go. I'm going to go out in August on Aquaman trailer. Don't hold me to that, of course, but I'm just making a wild guess. Lucifer Satan writes, the job Superman against Batman, though. No. Now you're talking about, look, they did not job Superman. When you've got a guy you exclusively send in there to lose, that's a jobber. But when you have a WrestleMania and you have 2 main eventers, one of them's going to win, one of them's going to lose. They're not jobbing per se. They are the elite headliners, right? So they're not jobbing per se. The whole, like with a regular jobber in wrestling, the only reason they're ever sent into the ring is to lose. The only reason they brought Superman into Supergirl was to put Supergirl over. Okay? That was clear. Superman and Batman had their fight. Somebody was going to lose, but it wasn't a job. It wasn't a jobber situation, like whatsoever. Big difference. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, Frode79 writes, $6.74 your change, sure. Shop smart. Shop as smart. Very nice callback and really good Evil Dead reference as well. Old Flicks Joe writes, seen this TV show called Happy. It's crazy. See it. I have had director friends of mine texting me and saying, have you seen Happy? I don't even know what it is. And I've got tons of you guys telling me to check out this show, Happy. Guys, let me know. What network is it on? Is it an Amazon show? Is it a CBS show? Let me know, and I will check it out, because I've had so many of you guys tell me to check out Happy. Thank you for bringing it up again, Old Flicks Joe. Devontae Brown writes, why did Mission Impossible never bring back female cast members like Paula Patton from 4 and Maggie Q from 3? Heard they tried for MI5, but why not MI6? I don't know. No idea. Whether it was contracts or whether it was story points. Whatever the point was, they just didn't do it for whatever reason. Whether, like, again, whether there's negotiations, whether they thought about bringing a certain character back, but it didn't work with their schedule, they couldn't agree on a contract, or they just wanted to take the narrative in a different direction. Honestly, I don't know anything more beyond that. I really don't. But let's call it what it is. Mission Impossible is not about the female characters. It's not about Simon Pegg's character. It's not about Jeremy Renner's character. It's not about any of the other characters. It's about Tom Cruise and his character. That's what the Mission Impossible movie is about. And they're constantly fiddling from the first Mission Impossible movie to the last one that we had. They're constantly fiddling with the surrounding cast they put around him. And sometimes it works better than others. But really, it's all about Cruise. So, yeah, there we go. JCL Productions, big fan for years and a filmmaker. What would your advice be for someone with a small budget to gain attention on a film? Is it all in the trailer? That's the best thing you can do, is put together a ridiculously good trailer. That's the biggest step you can make. Now, I wish I could sit here and say there's a magic button that you press if you have no budget for marketing, how to get everybody's attention. There simply isn't. There is a big degree of luck involved. There's a big degree of luck that the stuff that you do put together gets somebody's attention, that shares it in the right place, and then a few more. There's a domino effect of luck that's involved there. But really, that's it. The best thing you can do, though, is make the best trailer you possibly can. And that's your first step to getting there. And let's see. Final question comes to us from Ben Lorenowitz, who writes, I think Garfield's acting job in Silence was superior and more emotionally impactful and complex than his role in Hacksaw. Thoughts? No, I disagree. I agree. It was emotionally impactful. It was a great performance in Silence. I just thought he brought even more to Hacksaw. I really did. But, I mean, I'm really glad you bring it up, because nobody talks about Andrew Garfield's performance in Silence. And I think that was a movie that really got overlooked. I mean, it wasn't one of the best films of the year, but I enjoyed it. I did. I liked that film. And Andrew Garfield, who is a great actor and was a damn good Spider-Man, in my opinion, is often overlooked when talking about some of the great actors working today. But for me personally, I'll still take his performance in Hacksaw over his performance in Silence. But they were both great performances for sure. And even though he sent it in really late, I will take one last question from Raphael. And he writes, have you seen the Directors Roundtable on YouTube? Fascinating seeing seasoned directors like Patty Jenkins, Del Toro interact with a young director like Greta Gerwig. I have not seen that one. I have seen other versions, but I haven't seen that one yet. And you're actually like the second person to bring this up to me. So I got to take time to sit down and watch that, because everybody says it's really good. I had a buddy of mine tell me it was fantastic too. So I will sit down and watch that for sure. All right, guys. That will do it for this installment. It went a few minutes overtime, no big deal. That will do it for today's installment of Open Mic. I love this time of the day, just being able to sit around and talk movies with you guys. This has been great. Off the seat of our pants. This is wonderful. Thanks so much for being here, guys. Hey, remember, guys, if you're not a subscriber yet, why don't you take a second, click on that subscribe button, become a subscriber to my YouTube channel, and leave a thought or a comment below. Help the channel out by clicking the thumbs up button. And guys, consider becoming a Patreon supporter of mine. Head on over to www.patreon.com/John Campea. Get all the information on what it means to be a Patreon supporter, and maybe you will become one of my Patreon supporters as well to keep these shows alive and doing what we do. All right, guys, that'll do it for me. Remember, tomorrow is Friday, which means instead of open mic at 3 p.m., we have the Weekly Hero going over and recapping and talking all about everything happened in the world of comic book movies and TV show from the past week. A lot of things to talk about, obviously, with that. So we'll be back again 3 o'clock tomorrow. And of course, the John Campea Show tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 11 a.m. New York time. So make sure you guys come back and join me then. That'll do it for me, guys. Thanks a lot for joining me. My name's John Campea, and until my next video, bye-bye.